Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I'm Risha. I'm a registered psychotherapist and the founder of Risha the Base Psychotherapy. We're a culturally attuned, trauma-informed practice based in Ontario. We support South Asian individuals, couples, and families through therapy that truly understands the unique challenges of navigating identity, family expectations, and mental health. At our practice, we are passionate about helping folks who are struggling with people pleasing, family conflict, intergenerational trauma, and finding balance between their cultural roots and personal values. Today's guest is someone who brings both deep cultural insight and compassionate clinical wisdom to the table. I'm so excited to be joined by Darshana, a registered social worker and psychotherapist based in Ontario. As a second generation Indian Canadian, Darshana understands firsthand the tension of trying to take up space in environments that may not always feel safe or welcoming, something that many of us experience during the intensity of wedding season. Through her work at Clear Moon Therapy, she offers a soft, supportive space where clients are encouraged to show up authentically, feel their emotions fully, and begin to heal without judgment. Her approach is collaborative, grounded in the belief that every person already holds the capacity for growth and change. In this episode, we'll be diving into how we can care for our mental health, set boundaries, and navigate cultural expectations without losing ourselves in the glitter and the pressure of Desi wedding season. So I'm so excited to have you, Darshana. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and I'm so excited to talk about Indian weddings. I think it's such a timely conversation as we're
Mhm.
gearing into wedding season. It's the beginning of May. It's wedding season, bridal shower season, all the festivities, all the fun things, but also very stressful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, just like you said, wedding season can be such a fun time, but it can also be overwhelming.
Mhm.
So, what do you think makes Desi weddings such an emotionally intense time? And what do you think we can do to prepare ourselves for the festivities?
Yeah, I think like with weddings, there's always, you have to be on. You constantly have to
Hmm.
be on. And it's not just one day, not just 2 days. It's usually
Yeah.
like five
Yeah.
days of
Yeah.
events. And it requires a lot of prep, I think, emotional prep, because you're also seeing some family members that you might not normally see. And I've
Hmm.
actually had a lot of clients recently say, bring this up too, especially with social events where there's always this pressure of like, oh, do you know who I am? Like, oh, do you remember me? It's like, no,
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
really sorry that you don't.
I remember you from when you
Yeah.
were this small. Cool. I don't.
Right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
what's my name? It's like a test. And I do
Hmm.
think some of that is like what it feels like. It feels like you're going to write a test that
Yeah.
just like you don't get a grade for at the end. And it just feels like there's so much expectation to be on,
Mhm.
to be um perceived the right way.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm the eldest daughter, I have to make sure everybody's doing okay, make sure my
Yeah.
siblings are okay, make sure my family's okay. If you have grandparents that are you're attending a function with, making sure
Mm.
they're taken care of. Um, and it just always feels so intense and so
Yeah.
cumbersome and so overwhelming. There's always
Hmm.
just a lot going on and a lot of pressure to be perceived the right, socially appropriate way.
Mm. Hmm. And I find that pressure is not just like the individualized pressure. It's like, what about my family and what about the family image and what am I making? What are people perceiving of me? And what is that going to say about my family as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Hmm.
the questions that you can't run away from. I
Yeah.
think that's what people have to work really hard at being respectful, because we are a culture that
Mm.
deeply is respectful to elders, and also maintaining your own sense of self and privacy and being authentic to yourself and your boundaries. So I think that is something that requires a lot of capacity, requires a lot of energy,
Mm.
and is very draining for a lot of people, knowing that, I'm going to have to put myself in a space where I might not be able to be my most authentic self
Yeah.
for 5 days because there's no running away. There's no skirting people.
Hmm.
You can try your best, but you're eventually going to have to speak to these people. So I think that is
Hmm.
that the pressure to where you feel like you don't have a lot of choice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Matter.
And I'm really glad you mentioned that because I think we're going to kind of unpack where we might have choice, where we can make space for ourselves as well throughout these wedding festivities, because it is a long time, right? It isn't just one or two events usually. It is um, day after day after day of showing up and like getting ready and just being in clothes that maybe are not always super comfortable, if you're not used to it, right? And so it can feel like a lot. And I'm curious, like, what can we do um, to really prepare ourselves
Yeah.
before the festivities?
I think also realizing too that you will be getting some of these comments, you will be getting
Yeah.
some of these questions about your physique, about your relationship status, about your
Yeah.
education, about your work, very private, personal questions. You will
Mm,
be getting that. So preparing, even scripting a little bit of your
yeah.
own answers of what you might say to an auntie who
Mm,
asks you, "Oh, what are you doing now? Like, where do you work?"
mhm.
And if you say like, maybe not in the career path that is, what people might accept. Like, what can I say?
Right.
If
Yeah.
I'm working a job that isn't necessarily seen as, doctor, lawyer, engineer kind of thing. Like, what
Mm.
say instead that
Hmm.
feels safe for me. So I think preparing by
Yeah.
scripting some questions
Yeah.
that you will get.
Hmm.
Also, I think having your like, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Your people, like who are the people, the safe
Yeah.
people that are going with you to these events? Hopefully you do
Absolutely.
have some family members that you do trust and you do, are supportive that you can
Yeah.
rely on to
Mm.
provide a bit of a backbone, a bit of kind of framing some of these questions that you might get,
Mm.
a buffer.
Hmm.
So that I
Yeah.
think preparing by having safe people around
Hmm.
you. And I
Hmm.
think also kind of recognizing your own boundaries for things, right? Like
Sure.
knowing what you might be okay with, what you might not be, what
Mm.
your own sort of strategies could be to skirt certain things.
Mm-hmm. I think writing them down also can be really helpful. So not just in a journal, but like if you have your phone, to put that in your phone as well, so you can come back to it and use it as like a grounding skill as well to notice, okay, this is what I'm comfortable talking about. This is how much information I'm willing to give. And maybe some little tips and tricks to divert the conversation.
Yeah, and also sticking to if you feel like you're going into sort of maybe not safe, emotionally safe territory,
Mm,
bringing as much, comfort as you can, whether that's like something you hold on to, like if like
yes.
getting your nails done makes you feel more confident, then get
Yeah.
your nails done. Or
Yeah.
wearing sneakers versus heels makes you feel more comfortable and therefore less stressed about your feet hurting and
Mm.
therefore just having a little bit more capacity to deal with everything
Oh my
else, then
gosh.
wear the sneakers, right? Like
Yes.
doing these little things, which are self-care, to
Mm-hmm.
prepare for the unpreparable in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Or
Mm-hmm.
prepare for things outside of your control, right? We can only
Yeah.
control what we do. So doing certain small things to make ourselves feel confident, feel comfortable, feel safe, feel secure, do
Mm-hmm.
those things, whatever those things are, more of those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
I love that. I love that. And what do you think are some subtle ways that we can check in with ourselves during like back-to-back events or long functions? How can we maybe create a boundary plan before the wedding week starts? And like, how do we maybe check in with ourselves throughout that as well?
Yeah, I think so. Certain times there's always usually some kind of prayer, some kind of event where you're maybe not speaking. Those are great moments to just like take a
Yeah.
moment to reflect where you're not being asked to do anything, just to sit there and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Bathroom breaks, those are great. A great time to just check in with yourself. Reflecting on also like, your role. Like, why are you
Mm,
there? Right? Are you there for
yeah.
the couple? Are you there for your parents because they said you had to come? Are
Yeah.
you there because like what will people think?
Mm-hmm.
Obligation? Are you there maybe to meet people? Like maybe you are
Yeah.
interested in meeting your family that you haven't met in a long time or meeting other people. Like, and maybe it's
Mm,
a social thing for you. Like, what are the reasons that you're there? Is it truly, the marriage and the celebration?
mm,
Just think
mm-hmm.
reflecting on that too. And that even could be something you do prior.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of checking in with yourself.
Yeah.
Also, you can use that ally that I mentioned to kind of be like,
Yes.
hey, do you mind just like if you notice that I'm getting a little like sweaty or if I'm getting a little
Mm,
jittery, like if my leg is shaking, do you mind just like telling me to go aside and grab some air? Like
yes.
asking people to help you. You could even put a timer on your phone every
Mm-hmm.
hour. Just be like, hey, you good? As
Mm-hmm.
like a self check-in,
Yeah.
right? Or to take a breath. That might be a
Yes.
really great strategy. Like put a timer on your phone every hour that just says breathe.
Mm,
Let it out.
mm-hmm.
Take a breath
Yeah.
out. Because you might even find that you're holding your breath.
Yeah, and it's probably you are probably holding your breath. You probably are clenching your jaw. And your body's probably also pretty tense. And so having those moments to just check in with yourself, whether that's with a timer or like going to the washroom and then really just taking a moment to inhale deeply and exhale through your mouth. Nobody has to be there. And nobody's really noticing that you're doing that, but that'll help you show up in a more authentic and more comfortable way, hopefully, throughout the rest of the event.
Yeah, and that also sounds very grounding, right? So grounding
Mm-hmm.
practices, like anything that you do that helps bring you back to what's happening now. You could even do that while you're taking a sip of water. Maybe you have a beverage with you.
100%.
If it's water or soda or something else,
Mm-hmm.
coffee, tea, whatever it is,
Yeah.
take a sip. Just to
Yeah.
pause. Notice
Mm-hmm.
what that feels like. Is it
Mm-hmm.
cold? Is it warm? How does it feel on your tongue? How does it feel
Yeah.
against your teeth when you're swallowing it? Really, can you feel it going down? Does
Mm-hmm.
that feel, right? That can be
Mm-hmm.
a very small, simple moment to just do that. And even
Mm-hmm.
like another simple grounding strategy to use if you're sitting at the like a dinner table at the reception or whatever,
Yeah.
just place your palms on your legs. Notice what that
Yes.
feels like. And kind of like,
Yes.
sliding them down and up
Mm-hmm.
on your leg. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
can really tell what you're doing. Nobody's gonna say that
Yeah.
that's odd. But if you
Yeah.
just bring your
Nobody's
attention,
noticing.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
bring your attention to your hands, and what does that feel like? Is it
Yeah.
warm? Is it cold? Is
Mm.
it scratchy because of your outfit? What is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple of my favorite things to do to ground is like holding a cup. So
Mm,
whether that's like like iced drink or a warm beverage, just holding this and I have this my little mug here, but holding it and just noticing what that's like. And
yeah.
that's not weird. That's not
No.
weird at all. And then also noticing like even when you're sitting down, wiggling your toes and like
Mm.
bringing some movement into your feet is another great way to ground.
Yeah. Or even taking your shoes off. Like if you're at the dinner
Oh,
table, just take your shoes off. Nobody can tell.
mhm.
Under the table, what does it feel like to have your feet on the ground?
Mm, I love that. Absolutely. I also really love that you mentioned fresh air because I think
Mm.
that makes a really big difference for folks who might even feel like overwhelmed by like the loud sounds and maybe the smells that are coming up in that room, for example, and that like the banquet hall, to take a breather and go outside, look up,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah. I think that's so
Mm,
wonderful and so important that we can do. That's
mm,
all. It's also part of your own like personal boundary plan, right? Like what
yeah.
can I do to exert myself? I can take a step away,
Mm,
maybe even using a phrase.
mhm.
Maybe I'll have to think about that, or
Yeah.
I'm taking some time for myself. If somebody's asking you, oh, what are you up to? It's like, oh, I'm just taking some time for myself. If you're in between jobs, especially if you're not working, that might
Yes.
be a better way to frame that and
Yeah.
set that sort of boundary without saying I'm jobless.
Mm-hmm.
I could say I'm just taking some
Mm-hmm.
time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, using phrases like that too to create your own personal boundary plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I want to just reiterate, like putting that on your phone, really
Mm.
just having like thinking about it and writing it all out so that you do feel prepared, that you do feel like you kind of rehearsed a little bit, so that you don't feel like you're kind of caught in this moment.
Yeah, definitely. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really helpful for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of, grounding, let's talk about mindfulness. How can we be more present again in like during the wedding season? So we've got some grounding techniques. What else?
I think, yeah, like, so for example, making more connections, instead of trying to
Yeah.
perform, that is really simple, really being attuned and intentional with your time
Mm,
and energy, being mindful of what you're absorbing, what you're
yeah.
taking in, taking pictures for memory, not performance. That's also being
Mm,
mindful. Savoring the music, the food, the aspects that you like, right? Like
yeah.
laughter, right? Or the kids.
Mm,
I feel like it's always a good
mm,
time to see young kids, just kind of about
mm,
or realizing how big your community is. Sometimes that can feel very mindful, right?
yeah.
Being mindful is present moment awareness. So noticing
Mm,
what's happening
mm,
instead of like out here around
mm,
me versus what's happening up in here.
mm,
Right? So anything that helps you get out of that, even if it's like
mm,
using your phone as a tool to remind you to breathe, or having your ally, your cousin, or whoever it is, just like tap you on your shoulder, be like, hey, like, what's up? That even that can be a moment just to get yourself out of your mind and into what's happening in the present.
I love that. And like taking pictures for memory, not performance, is a big one because I think social media also plays such a big role. And then there's like this,
Mm.
like the Desi wedding rat race that is really like booming right now. How much can you spend? And like, did you wear the same outfit? And like, you better not have worn the same outfit because like that is again something that might come up for your in terms of your family image, right? Like, what does that mean about your family? When really it's like, I can reuse an outfit. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And
literally
taking
doesn't mean anything.
taking pictures just made me think of like, when we're
Yeah.
talking about our own boundaries too, like if you don't want to be in a photo. So I think
Oh.
there's so much pressure, like, oh, hey, let's take a picture
Mm,
as a family, with the bride and groom, with like your
yeah.
cousins, with aunties, uncles, everybody. It's like, oh, let's take
Hmm.
pictures, let's take a picture. And you might
Hmm.
not feel comfortable doing that, right? So
Hmm.
taking pictures of what you might want to, like if that's
Yeah.
the centerpiece, if that's the food, if that's
Hmm.
the colors of something. Take
Yeah.
pictures of that, right? Like savor
Hmm.
what needs to be savored for you. Those
Hmm.
pictures that, you're potentially being forced to be in, they might not
Right.
necessarily be for you, but the picture
Hmm.
that you take of the beautiful centerpiece that caught your eye, that's for you. That's being
Hmm.
mindful.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah. So much
Yeah.
pressure to just like put on a face and smile. And if you don't feel like it, that might be something that you add to your list
Yeah.
of boundary planning, right? Like, what can I say to not be in a photo once I'm like exerted my smiling for the
Mm.
day in photos?
Absolutely. It starts becoming like forced and you're
Yeah, and
just
because it's not just
tired.
one, it's like seven.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think about like your why, right? Like why are you showing up to this? And you'd mentioned that a little bit before. Like why are you coming to this event? And what do you think you're going to gain from it? And even if it is out of obligation, if you've had to go due to obligation, what do you think you can gain from this moment and this time? And so that just requires a little bit of a mindset shift. Um, but I would be curious, right? Like maybe it is for the food. Maybe it is you have that one cousin, like you said, that like you haven't seen in a while and that you might enjoy yourself, or you might meet someone new and that could be really exciting as well and fun.
Yeah, the music, it could be anything that you choose,
Mm-hmm.
to go for, and just, reminding yourself that yes, there's lots of things that perhaps you won't like, but there
Yeah.
can also be things that you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So remembering your why in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we talk about aunties, like the comments can get personal.
Hmm.
Um, there's comments about like body image, about matchmaking, even like your fertility journey, which is wild. Like really none of your business unless someone decides it is your business. But how would you recommend like handling these conversations?
Yeah, I think kind of redirecting
Yeah.
the aunties to give with grace, with respect, giving them something to hold
Mm,
on to. So maybe it's like, oh, I'm not getting married, but I bought a
hmm.
house, right? Like, so it's like
Hmm.
giving them whatever nugget you feel comfortable sharing, because
Yeah.
remember, it's your choice, giving them some kind of redirection. And that doesn't mean throw your other cousin who's single under the bus. That just means that you give them something to hold on to, right? If
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're able to say like, oh, I don't feel comfortable answering that question.
Mm,
If you don't want to kind of name that in that way, you
yeah.
can give them something to hold on to.
Hmm.
And then, like I was saying earlier, using cousins, other family members as allies, that can be really
Yeah.
helpful to mitigate and buffer those
Yeah.
conversations. Because if you might not be able to speak up, maybe they can, right? Like if
Hmm.
you're not able to say that, I'm single, not by choice, but because of circumstances,
Hmm.
maybe your cousin can chime in and be like, it's really hard dating right now,
Yeah.
and provide that if you don't feel comfortable to say
Mm.
that.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is like with some of these aunties, they'll ask the questions, but they might not want the truth.
Yeah.
So there's also other ways that we can kind of go around
Yeah.
these conversations. And like if you choose to be unhinged, you can be unhinged if you really want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and you can
Yeah.
also use humor. If they're like, "Oh, are you seeing anybody?" Like, "Yeah, 12." Like,
Absolutely.
right? Like, depending
Yes.
on the person, depending on the context, depending on your
Hmm.
sense of self, like if that is
Yeah.
something you feel comfortable doing,
Yeah.
um, like assessing for safety in that way. But humor, yeah, if they're like, oh, are you seeing anybody?
100%.
Yeah, I'm seeing 12 guys actually.
Hmm.
And realizing that too, it's like they might not want the answers of
Right.
what you're thinking. Like, especially if, maybe you're part of the queer community or,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not heterosexual. What happens if like, oh, did
Yeah.
you find a husband? You're like, no, but I have a wife
Yeah.
and you're female identifying.
Yeah.
That would stop the conversation then and there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
So,
really love that you mentioned like assessing for safety, right? Because sometimes it's not safe and maybe someone that hasn't come out yet. But in moments that maybe it feels okay to be like, you know what, actually, I'm queer, I'm gay. Like that's not what I'm looking for. Can be really empowering as well.
yeah, I
Hmm.
definitely would always say assess for safety, know your own personal
Yeah.
boundaries, what feels comfortable for you to say. But yeah,
Hmm.
if you can use humor in that way, you can use your own disclosure in that way.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes with those conversations, it is very heteronormative.
Yeah. 100%. And like when we talk about body image, it's also very like westernized.